I'm not happy. The hate is real. So much hate. If you like a bit of controversy, stay tuned, because in this video I'm talking about the top 10 most hated fragrances as voted for by Fragrantica users. Spoiler, I actually really like the one that's at number 1. Not happy. Okay, so recently I've been doing this little video series based on the recent Fragrantica Awards, and as I was looking down the list, I came to a category called I hate this perfume. Now, if you're easily offended, you might not want to watch, because I'm sure there are some fragrances in this list that you love that other people hate. Can you deal with that? If you can, feel free to carry on watching. The top 10 list on Fragrantica is made up of men's and women's fragrances, but because I talk about men's fragrances on this channel, I've taken the women's fragrances out of there and then come up with the first 10 men's or unisex fragrances. Most of these are men's designer fragrances. I think there's just 2 that are niche unisex. So if you want to see which fragrances Fragrantica users hate the most, stick around. Before we get into the list, I would really appreciate it if you could drop me a quick like on the video. It really helps the channel. Just down here, if you're not sure where it is, it's just the little thumbs up icon. Click that and I'll love you for it. All right, the top 10 most hated fragrance is from Dior. This is a very famous fragrance. It's actually a flanker, a very famous flanker of a very famous fragrance. I'm talking about Dior Sauvage Parfum. I don't own this fragrance, but I do like it. I don't think this is a bad fragrance at all. I don't really think it deserves that much hate. I think maybe people hated the fact that Dior released yet another flanker, because before this one there was already the EDP, and then of course we had the EDT original. So this was the 3rd Sauvage fragrance that smelled pretty similar to the other Sauvages. So I think people are maybe hating on the fact that Dior are really cashing in with this one rather than hating on the fragrance itself. I actually think it's a good fragrance. I don't own it because I own the EDP and the EDT. If I didn't own those, I would have no problem wearing it. Let's talk about the 9th most hated fragrance. This is not a massive surprise that it's in here, but it does throw up a real discussion about whether fragrances are hated because of the way they smell, or because of who's made them, or because of controversy maybe surrounding the fragrance. From Fragrance One, it's Office for Men. Now, do you think people have hated on this fragrance because they hate the way it smells, or because maybe they hate Jeremy fragrance, or at least they don't really like what he's doing? Jeremy is a real character. He's very divisive in the fragrance community. People love him or hate him, and I think the people that hate him probably have decided that they hate his fragrances, whether they've smelled them or not. This is actually a really enjoyable scent. The scent itself certainly does not deserve any hate. It's a very nice, fresh, powdery, clean smelling scent, very easy to wear. I think for some people it's very difficult to separate the scent from the circus show that surrounds this scent, and I get it. Not a lot of fragrances are that bad that we hate them, so people have got to find some reason to hate on a fragrance because the category was there on Fragrantica and they wanted to vote for it. So if they don't like Jeremy, they've probably decided that they want to put one of his fragrances in the most hated list. Another reason why this maybe hasn't endeared itself to everybody is when it came out, it was heavily criticized for being overpriced. The prices on Jeremy's fragrances have been ridiculous, and there's always all sorts of different buy 3 get 10 offers. Jeremy hate aside, if you take Jeremy out of the equation, if you didn't know who had released this fragrance onto the market and you just smelled it, would you really hate it? I don't think so. I think it's a good fragrance. I think it's a decent fragrance. What do you think? Do you hate Office for Men? Blood, sweat, sperm, adrenaline. All fragrance notes that are probably not on anyone's dream list of fragrance notes for 2022. Of course, the fragrance I'm talking about is from Etat Libre d'Orange, and it is the very famous, so many comments on Fragrantica about this fragrance. It's Secretions Magnifique. This fragrance is supposed to represent the smells of people when they're getting jiggy with it, basically bodily fluids. The comments on Fragrantica range from people saying it's the most vomit-inducing scent they've ever smelled to people saying it's actually not that bad. It's kind of musky. I could wear it. Personally, I smelled this a long time ago, and I remember thinking it wasn't quite as bad as I was expecting. It's not a fragrance that I would wear. I don't know, I guess it's sort of one of those novelty fragrances that maybe some people might wear in certain situations, or the type of person who wants to let people know they're wearing a fragrance that has notes of blood, sweat, sperm, adrenaline. Obviously a very divisive fragrance, an easy one to bash, no real surprise it's in this list. At number 7, from 1989, it's Joop, Homme. Again, I don't hate this fragrance. I never really wore it because I always found it too sickly sweet. I was always Cool Water. Cool Water was the masculine fragrance that I was interested in. I always thought Joop, Homme smelled a little bit girly, if I'm honest, back in the day. It's a very sickly sweet sandalwood scent that I wouldn't find hateful to wear, but I think it's a fragrance that was of its time back in 1989. I think maybe that smell was a little bit more on trend, but because it's not that popular these days, I think people have decided that they hate it. At number 6, this one was a big surprise because a lot of people love this fragrance, but it has become extremely popular, which is maybe the downfall of this one and maybe why fragrance lovers from Fragrantica have voted this in the most hated list. I'm talking about Baccarat Rouge 540. Again, I don't own this one. I really would like to own it. I think I've got so many smell-alikes of Baccarat Rouge 540 that I've never felt a need to actually buy a bottle, but I wouldn't mind owning it because I think it's a really good fragrance, especially on a woman. I love smelling this on a woman. And I'll tell you what, I've smelled this on quite a lot of women, just being out and about, being in bars. You smell Baccarat Rouge 540 quite a lot. I think part of the hate directed at this fragrance is maybe because a lot of muggles have discovered this fragrance and they think they've made the fragrance discovery of the year, and us fragrance lovers are like, yawn. And it's become a bit like Invictus. It's an expensive niche fragrance that has trickled down into the mainstream, so much so that it's very popular and fragrance lovers are probably sick of smelling it. I still like it though. If you love fragrance as much as I do, head over to my online store, luxparfum.co.uk. You'll find my favourite brands plus brands you can't find anywhere else in the UK. Link is in the description. We are at number 5 and this is where the massacre starts. That's the only way I can describe this. So the 5th most hated fragrance is Paco Rabanne's Phantom. Got a lot of hate on release for just being a bit of a boring, bland fragrance, and I don't hate it, but I don't really like it that much. To me, it just smells like a bit of a generic appley mush. So I think Paco Rabanne dropped the ball a little bit because I quite like the robot bottle. Pretty decent bottle design, very unique, but I don't think they came out with a fragrance that was as unique as the bottle design, and maybe that ties into the hatred for this one as well. Hate is always a strong word, but this is a fragrance release that fell flat on its face. Most people were very underwhelmed, and so a lot of people have voted to hate it. Number 4, again, not a surprise, although again, I don't agree with it because I really enjoy this fragrance. From Paco Rabanne, it is the absolute classic 1 million. So I was a bit late to the party with this fragrance. I was busy impressing people with La Malle for about 10 years when this fragrance came out. So I've only bought it in the last few years. So I knew about its associations with being youthful, juvenile, maybe worn by certain types of younger people. So I think maybe the hate partly comes from that, partly comes from the fact that it was worn by so many people and people have just got sick of smelling it. I actually think it's a good fragrance. I like it. It's a really nice, sweet, woody, spicy scent. And if you thought that was it for the Paco Rabanne bashing, oh no, more to come. At number 3, it is another Paco Rabanne fragrance. This time, it's Invictus. I had a bottle of Invictus going back a few years ago now. I drained it, I enjoyed it. This one also has some associations with it having this bubblegum sweetness, and it's maybe a little bit juvenile, and perhaps the bubblegum trend is now over, so Invictus is a dated fragrance. Maybe that's where the hate comes from on this one. And again, I think there's a popular theme here. It's a fragrance that was smelled everywhere. It became very popular. People probably simply just got sick of smelling it, and I think that is an easy reason to hate on a fragrance. So Invictus from Paco Rabanne, the number 3 most hated. You're right over there, Paco. He's in a bloody mess in the corner of the room. He's been kicked that much. Brutal, brutal. Don't worry, I'm sure someone will be along in a minute to give you another kick in. While we're waiting for that, let's do the number 2. This one is again an extremely popular fragrance, probably the most popular fragrance on the planet right now. If you go out into the public, you stand a pretty good chance of smelling this. From Dior, it's the original Sauvage EDT. This is a very loud fragrance. Some people describe it as a little bit screechy. Some people describe it as nauseating. I don't get any of that. Again, it's a fragrance that I don't wear very often, but when I do, I enjoy it. I think it's a nice smell, but it is a strong fragrance, and if people overspray this, which a lot of people probably do, then it can get a little bit abrasive, I guess, a little bit too in your face. This is definitely a fragrance to go easy on the trigger. In fact, the crazy thing is, the EDT is probably the strongest of the whole line of fragrances. Very popular, same thing, people are probably sick of smelling it. A lot of people are probably overspraying it, which I think draws a little bit of hate onto Sauvage. What do you think? I know that the community is divided with Sauvage. Some people love it, some people hate it. Fragrantica users absolutely hate it. What about you? Do you hate Sauvage EDT, or do you still wear it? Talk about kicking a man while he's down. The mob is back for more Paco bashing, because at number 1, the fragrance that I really enjoy, that is the number 1 most hated fragrance of Fragrantica users, is 1 million Parfum. What? This is a pretty nice solar type fragrance. It's sweet, it's fruity, it's salty, it's got a bit of a sun lotion vibe. It cannot be the most hated fragrance. It's just not fair. Paco Rabanne even took a little bit of a creative risk with this fragrance. It doesn't just smell like another flanker. They came up with something that was different from the other 1 million fragrances, and the thanks they get is all this hate on this fragrance. I mean, it's not the prize of my collection or anything like that, but number 1 most hated? Really? Don't know about that. What do you think? So 4 of the 5 most hated fragrances are from Paco Rabanne. I'm not sure. I think there's something going on here. Are Paco Rabanne really the brand that has had the worst fragrance releases? It seems to me that it's more brand hate than scent hate. But let's keep the hate rolling on. Why not? Do you agree? Is Paco Rabanne the most rubbish fragrance brand out there? Do you hate the brand? Do you love the brand? What are your top 5 most hated fragrances? If you like this video, give it a like. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And if you do all that, I will see you in the next one. I'm just going to go and see if Paco needs a plaster.